Sometimes a lack of confidence is not about confidence at all, but about how you give your power away for all the wrong reasons. I'm Bierbaum, and I'm going to show you a different route to being confident. One that is less about trying to boost your confidence and more about getting a major obstacle to confidence out of the way. Take a look at this.
American?
I'm Christina, and this is my friend Vicky.
I'd like to invite you both to come with me to Oviedo.
To come where?
To Oviedo. For the weekend. We leave in 1 hour.
What? Where is Oviedo?
A very short flight.
By plane?
Mm-hmm.
What's in Oviedo?
I go to see a sculpture that is very inspiring to me. Very beautiful sculpture. You'll love it.
Oh, right. You're asking us to fly to Oviedo and back.
No, we'll spend the weekend.
You get the clear sense that whatever happens, it's not going to affect his day or his sense of self. He couldn't give a damn about the outcome, whether they come or not. He couldn't give a damn what they might think of him. And thirdly, he couldn't give a damn what anybody else who might hear the conversation might think. In my previous video on confidence, I gave the example of the bungee jumper who can still jump despite this sudden flood of negative thoughts and emotions. So we've seen that acting despite your thoughts and feelings is possible, and that's a way to appear and ultimately feel confident, because your feelings will fall in line with your actions. So notice that word, despite your thoughts and feelings. We've learned that approach, the approach that hinges around the word despite. This approach I'm going to show you in this video hinges around a different word, the word without. In the movie, we can say that he acts without concern for consequence, for what people think or for what might happen. So there's our word, without. So let's examine how that might show up for you. Are there times when you don't act and feel that you don't have the confidence to act because you believe that you might be laughed at, talked about, or criticized, or that you might damage and possibly lose the relationship, or that you won't get the outcome that you're hoping for, or that you might suffer reputational damage? This can be in a personal setting, like asking someone out on a date, or in a professional setting, like speaking out on an issue that concerns you. Activities that in our minds have potentially major social consequences, and which happen as conversations. It follows that if we could reduce the fear of consequence, we might find it easier to act, which we would experience as greater confidence. Certainly that's how it would look on the outside, and because we know that feelings follow actions, we can predict that we will actually feel more confident. If you do this repeatedly, and you gather the evidence from your experience each time, an important step, we'll get to that, you can build a case for it and do it again, each time with greater ease until it becomes, well, almost easy. In other words, it becomes real confidence. How would you do that? And remember, we're focusing on those perceived social consequences. The thought process that's usually going on when you're concerned about social consequence is something like this. What will people think if I mess up? Will I make a fool of myself? What will it mean for my life and my chances in life? What if I only get one chance and I don't make it? My life will be over. I often joke that we go, I'll lose my job, my children will suffer, and I'll die. Maybe at this point you might want to pause and check and make a note of your own internal narrative when it comes to these things. You can be fairly sure that those are unexamined beliefs. So let's examine them. Imagine you have this blue ball in your hand, and that represents your personal power, your power to act. But now you're worried what other people are thinking, and that's preventing you from acting. So effectively, you've handed them your blue ball. Go on, hand it to them. Think about a scenario where you're struggling to act. Now think about the people in that scenario whose opinion you're concerned about. Now, in your mind, hand them the blue ball. Go over, hand it to them, and come back and sit down in your mind. Now imagine you're sitting there wondering whether that was a good idea. Was it even necessary to hand them your blue ball? Because usually it's like that, right? We do something and then we think, why did I do that? So in your attempt to evaluate, you get out your white coat and your clipboard, because now you're going to act like a scientist and you're going to go and ask each of them, what they were or are thinking about you, or what they would think about you if you did ABC. And what do you suppose you will find? You should really try this. Actually do it. But you might worry about the very thing we're talking about, the social consequence. And to be sure, that's okay, because that part of ourselves is there to protect us from doing dumb stuff. So we don't want to reject that part of ourselves or get rid of it completely. We just want to manage it when it's taking over and not being useful. We want to be in charge of that part of ourselves instead of it being in charge of us. So let's stay with playing it through in your mind. We're not going to actually go and do this. But imagine you go there with your white coat, your clipboard, and you ask them, think about this carefully. Do you think you'll find that they were or would be thinking about you as much as you are worried that they will be? No. You'll probably find that they weren't thinking about you at all, or that if you did that, they wouldn't think about you. At least not for very long. Chances are greater that they'll be doing what you're doing, which is worrying about what you think of them. And if they do think of you, you'll most likely find that they won't be thinking what you are concerned about. Believe me, I've been around. I've been coaching for 2 decades. When you coach, you ask questions. You inquire what the other person is thinking, how they are interpreting things. I can tell you that 90% of the time, the other person is not thinking what you think they're thinking. You really ought to test this out so that you don't have to convince yourself of it. Just naturally, in your day-to-day conversations, instead of assuming what the other person is thinking, ask them. Inquire, what is your view on this or that? And then shut up and listen. You'll find, and I guarantee this, that it's different from what you were assuming. And the more you do this, the more you will naturally dissolve the assumption that you know what other people are thinking of you or will think of you. And it won't be about convincing yourself. You'll shift that belief based on solid evidence. Of course, people are not always honest. They might not tell you exactly what they were thinking, so you might have to coax it out of them. Ask them once, twice. Then, even if you don't get the whole picture, or if people do say exactly what you had feared, you can move to the next step, which is to calculate what impact their thoughts or opinion might have on you. If you're finding value from this, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button. You're also invited to like, share, and comment. Have you heard the saying, sticks and stones might break my bones, but words can never harm me? Well, that's true. But don't try to convince yourself. Really look at it. Those people who you are now interviewing might seem like your whole world and like they have a lot of power over you. You've given them your blue ball, after all, by spreading their opinions. But once again, do some research. For this one, you can look into the lives of famous people, sports people, movie stars, politicians, and see how much negative comment they draw. And we look at those people because their lives are available to us, and we can examine them not because they're special in any way. Although it is true that they have managed to have success and to maintain their careers, they have found a way. And the evidence is strong if you look at those examples that every successful person you see out there, even the best-selling authors and biggest movie stars and top business people, have experienced rejection along the way. Do you think you could be the exception that would impress everybody, bar none? If you're still not sure, lay out your worst-case scenario in your mind. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen if I do this thing, if I speak up? And then lay out that scenario, and then that scenario, and then that scenario until you get to the end of that road. And when, in your mind, you've lost your job and been kicked out of your social circle, ask yourself how you would respond. Would you learn from what happened and try again with the same audience or a new one? I hope so. In fact, I know you will, just as many of those famous people did, just as many people have done. In some ways, you'd have no choice. The key question is, would you survive? Yes. Would you learn and grow and be a better person for it? I know you would. So then, if that's the case, what do you have to worry about? Go and take that action. But don't be foolish, of course. That voice is there to guide you. As I said, this is not about rejecting or ignoring that voice, but managing it. It's about acting without, there's that word, without, fear of an imagined social consequence, the other word, imagined. So do you want to go and ask for your blue ball back? If you're with me on this, I suggest you go and do that now. Actually play it through in your mind so you complete that scenario. Another consequence we concern ourselves with and which impacts our experience of feeling confident is the situational consequence In other words, the actual outcome of the situation. In other words, will I succeed? Will I get into the team? Will I get the girl or the boy? Will they come with me on the date? Will I get the team to agree and do what I'm suggesting? This is much the same as the social consequence because it still involves other people, but instead of worrying about mere gossip and the emotional elements of the relationship, we're worried about reputation and what decisions those people might make. So in a way, it can be more serious than a mere social consequence. Still, the same principle and practice applies. As before, we really believe that this is our one and only chance in life, and that if I don't get this one, my life will be over. I'll never get another chance. Once again, that's based on an unexamined belief. If we turn it over and look at it from all sides, we'll see that life is a marathon, not a sprint, and we have many chances. If you're unsure, you know by now what to do. Go back and look at those sports people and celebrities and read their stories, or ask some of the older, more experienced people around you. And if you are one of the older and more experienced people and still struggling with this, perhaps take a deeper look at your own life. I'm sure you'll recognize that you haven't only had one chance. And maybe you need to recalibrate that belief based on actual evidence, actual experience. The fact is that when we're less attached to the outcome, we feel less pressure and we can feel more confident in terms of readiness to act, willingness to act. This is something that is known to apply in sales negotiations. The one who wants the deal the most is the weakest negotiator. They will also appear less confident. Conversely, the person who is willing to walk away from a deal, who has less to lose because they've decided they have less to lose, has the upper hand and appears more confident. For a man approaching a woman, this is also true. If you appear desperate, you come across as lacking confidence. If, like Juan Antonio, you're unfazed by what happens, you give off the air of confidence. And I'm willing to bet that you will also feel it. So in summary, here's what you need to do. Firstly, build a case based on evidence that A, you don't know what the other person will really be thinking. B, even if they think the worst things, it doesn't matter. You can find other people and still succeed and prove the naysayers wrong. C, if you don't succeed with this attempt, you'll get more chances to prove yourself. Keep practicing and you'll succeed eventually. Secondly, act based on the evidence and evaluate the outcomes. And don't ask, did it work? Because you might not always get the outcome you were hoping for. Especially the first time, it might well backfire. In fact, very often it does. Instead, ask, did I survive? Will I live to fight another day? If you're asking that question, then the answer is obviously yes. Third step, after you've done that, maybe 6 or 10 times, then start to evaluate the evidence on balance of probabilities and build a more realistic set of beliefs around the consequences of taking action. And fourth, and finally, notice how much more confident you not only appear to be to others, but how much more confident you feel inside now that you're not so afraid of what might happen. Thank you. And if you found value from this, please remember to subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.